So today I wanted to try something a little different. So I've been professionally working in 3D for about over a decade. Lately, especially with a lot of the advancements that I've been seeing with ChatGPT and Claude, I wanted to get back into actually trying to make a game solo. One of my goals with this video, which is obviously not a tutorial, but kind of going over how I'm creating a new test project that's basically for finding an art style that is something that I can use going forward when I want to test out game development related stuff. As a solo developer, the art style is solo dev friendly. Even though I'm a professional artist, I don't want to spend months on a single asset. So far, a lot of the things that I've created have been AA or AAA approaches for creating 3D and 2D assets. And that's just not going to fly as a solo developer. Prior to this, I was using my traditional workflow where it's just kind of like I create a high poly, a low poly, I bake the information into a normal map and do a bunch of fancy stuff. And one thing I've realized is when I also want to program and design and do YouTube tutorials and stuff like that, it's very challenging, especially given my time constraints and because I have a lot of other responsibilities. It's really hard to spend a month or two designing and iterating on a 3D model, just a single 3D model. And I think that's the main motivation. But also, so this video, it's really about my excitement for using LLMs to develop a game. But also, I don't think it's really ready yet. And I'm sure anybody who's tried to use ChatGPT or Claude and try to use it in some sort of workflow in game dev, you'll notice very quickly it's just not there. It's kind of frustrating. It could do some things amazingly well and a lot of things not so much. But for me, it's very clear that it's something for me to get excited about because I feel like it doesn't take a giant leap for me to see where this is going. So if in a few years from now, I can really just get to focus on creating games that normally I just don't have the time and the risk tolerance to create. But in the future, I feel like, no, that's a real possibility. Like we can, as a solo developer, I can potentially punch significantly above my weight in terms of developing a really cool game as a solo developer. That's where my focus has been is I want to have a project where I can quickly create art for. And I want it to look good. The art style needs to look good. It needs to be simple. I want to be quick. I don't want to get too bogged down in trying to create art for it. And so that's where the motivation started. And it wasn't all that easy. I thought it would be easier and to just go over some things. So I've been making games for a while now, even though I know how to make AAA quality art assets. It's not something that I want to do solo. And originally, I wanted to just mock up some ideas. Like for the context of this video, I'm a solo developer, but I work professionally in teams and large teams, and I've led 3D art teams. But my focus right now is like, what, as a solo developer, what kind of systems do I want to work in? Well, in my case is like a stylized, simple art style, but also I wanted to use procedural generated worlds or maps or tiles or whatever you want to call them. So I started off by using Claude and ChatGPT and trying to flip my workflow upside down, where normally I would do a lot of research. If I didn't know something, I would search online and really take it all in. What I want to experiment to see, can I do that research just using LLMs? Where it's like, if I don't know something about a topic, just going in there and seeing if I can create something that works. And that's how I started. And if you look at all of these folders that I have here, in my Unity asset folder, it says like attempt 0, attempt 1, attempt 2, attempt 3, 4, 5, 6. Each one of those folders represents a full day of work. It's me trying to create a procedural tile map in 3D. without having much prior experience in it. The general idea is not knowing too much about it, using the wave function collapse and just trying to figure it out with Claude and ChatGPT. And one thing that was very frustrating for me is that it would get me 95% there, but that last 5% was basically impossible given my inability to prompt it in a way that it understands. I'm sure it's possible to prompt it, but I'm fairly technical. And if I'm struggling to prompt it because I lack the necessary technical understanding, then I just put a pause on it. Be like, okay, it's a little bit too early. Because in my dream scenario is you don't have to be super technical and you can prompt these LLMs and it just goes smoothly. In this case, it did not. And that's where I paused after like my 5th, 6th attempt. It's like a week. That's why you haven't seen a tutorial from me for a while. And this is for me, right? This is educational for me because at the end of the day, I'm learning too. So some of us, I do watch tutorials on YouTube and all that other stuff. But when I have a question like, oh, is this something you can do? But there isn't a video on it online. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to go try it. So that's when I decided, okay, for the procedural stuff, I don't have the right ingredients. I'm going to pause on trying to use LLMs for this. And then I started looking around and I found that Unity, let me find where this is. I found that Unity has their own Tilemap system that is oftentimes used for 2D. And when I was playing around with it, I noticed that, hey, wait a minute, I can repurpose this and it works quite nicely for 3D maps. And this is my temporary solution. The main goal for me when I'm doing this is like, okay, I just want to make sure that the tiles that I have work. Like, I just want to have all the art tiles ready so that if later on I decide I want to create, like, let's say later on LLMs are much better and I'm like, hey, look, I got all these tiles already made. All the art is done. Just let's redo this tile map script system. But so in the meantime, the Unity's tile map system is something that I can just use to just build out the system knowing it all works, the art and stuff like that. The tile map system, it's interesting because it's like very useful, but there isn't really too much information on this. I think probably mostly because studios who are using procedural tile map stuff, they're probably using their custom solutions. From what I've seen, most of the time, if you have real developers, they probably want to do this stuff from scratch. And oftentimes I've seen some developers who, even if the tool exists, like it's functional, they'd rather just create one from scratch for their own selves. I think sometimes developers are also, they're creators too, right? So, but I have seen developers who would just create a tool, even though I'm like, hey, it's already in Unity, but they'll do it anyway because it's fun, right? This is fun to build out. But to my surprise, there's a game object parameter in the tiling rules. It's a scriptable object in Unity. And from there, it's just setting the direction of the tiles. Yeah, so it's directional based. It's basically like saying like, let me show you an example of what this looks like. In this case, I have a tile in the center and it's just tile 1. And the main question is like in this scenario, assume the water is the edge, like no land beyond this water. Given this tile, there's nothing to the top and to the left to it. What it would look like is this. Is there a tile right next to it? Where is the next tile? For people who just want to just follow along or you want to create your own thing, here is an example where my naming for this is very basic because I wanted my way of identifying these tiles to be visual instead of reading the names and just being like hard to follow. In my case is you just look at the sprite sheet. The sprite sheet's only there to visually know like how to connect it. Where you see tile 1 in the sprite on the left corner, notice in the rule set, the corresponding area where the tile 1 sprite is, there you'll see the rules, and then you'll see the game object corresponding to it right next to it. And here's all the rule sets that I've used for all the given tiles on the left. And from my current understanding, this is all the rules that you need and all the tiles that you need. I think there is 47 tiles to go in any direction in a 90-degree tile system. So if you want to follow along, or you just want to, it's not really a tutorial, so you can't really follow along. But if you were trying to create your own system, you need 47 tiles. And here's the rules. If you want to know exactly which rule that I use for which tile, you can just look at this image in the screen and just copy paste it, and the rule should work. So around here is where I built out the map, and I was like, okay, cool, this looks cool. But so the tile's working, everything's tiling right, but it just looks so bare bone. And I'm like, I got to add something in there. So the next thing was adding some extra cliff height to the interior tiles. And then when I went to modeling this tile, I used like a layering system. And this is just I just want to make the 3D modeling process as lazy as possible. So I don't want to do some fancy textures. This is basically palette. Like I have just a bunch of gradients textures. I'm just layering geometry over one another and not worrying about like coloring like bespoke texture work. It's a lot of it just layering geometry in a way that it looks like it's a single mesh, but it's not. And here is an example of what that looks like when you take my geometry and explode it so that you can see all the layering effects. And here's an animation that I created just to show you what that looks like. So like I said, this is a layering effect. Here you see my tile layering. This is like a simple image where on the left, I'll just show you the wireframe. And in the center is what it looks like with all that turned off and what you see in the game. And then on the right is just separating out the geometry that's all separate, just so you can see how this simple approach works. And here's a quick modeling speed play blast. Basically, I'm just in this image where I'm just kind of adjusting the model, adjusting tiles. And you notice that I'm using extra geometry, not because I care. I just think at this level, I wouldn't be overly concerned about geometry or optimization. At this case, it's like, it's very easy for me to adjust a texture this way. And I'm prioritizing ease of use because this is already low poly enough. It's okay to add a few edge loops here and there. It's not a big deal because I see a lot of more new 3D artists, they get so bogged down on like, oh, is this the lowest geometry possible? It's like, look, if it takes you 10 times longer to half the geometry, you got to ask yourself, is that really worth it? Especially as a solo developer. So yeah. And here I am taking that new cliff tile and I'm building out that extra height layer. Like the more, I just feel like for it to really showcase the tiling system, it just needs a little bit of extra height. So that's that. And around here is, I just realized I need some trees. Like this looks fine from a land perspective, but I really want to just add one tree in there that I just duplicate around to just make it look better. I feel like that will take it a long way. So that was my last thing for this tile setup before I can say, okay, it's in a good spot to call this episode 1 and move on. And here is like same approach the approach here is just easy texture work using edge loops to support the texture. And the textures are simple cell shaded. And I'm just duplicating mesh around here and just making sure everything looks nice. The nice thing about this approach is I don't have to create new textures. I have a palette and I just keep sampling it as I'm modeling. I'll add extra edge loops if I need it. And it's okay, even in production where I'll see somebody who's like a little bit on the like junior side. And if they see an extra edge loop, they just assume the worst case scenario. It's like, it's not a big deal. Like you're not going to save that many frames by having double the vert count. And also this is already low poly as it is, even though it's not the lowest poly it could be, it's not a big deal. So yeah, just cutting the mesh in a way where it allows me to quickly texture it and just creating a tree that I'm going to just plaster all over the map. And I think it'll look much better after this is done. And then here I'm using that tree we just created and I brought it into Unity and I'm just duplicating it and adjusting the scale. I think it's just really nice. And also putting it at the edge so I can break out the silhouette a little bit. You don't want everything just feeling like it's like, one thing I like to do is just put the tree out closer to the water edge so you can kind of create more interesting silhouette. Yeah, so this is the beginning. This is what I'm going to call episode 1. And going forward, anytime I want to test out like advancements in LLMs for game dev, I'm going to just open up this project and see what I can do with it. The nice thing about this is it's not super fancy art or super technical. I can just focus on the coding and the LLMs and not let the art get in the way of it.